last year, so not very long yet.
No, no.
Oh.
There goes, who's that? Who's the black
That's
cat?
Neville.
That's
And
Neville.
Neville is our escape artist. He does this all the time. He likes when the door's open, he boots it out. So Neville's going to go back and play with his friends now.
Silke, I'm curious, you mentioned that you've been open for a bit less than a year now. How have, and there's Carl. Hey, Carl.
Hey,
How are you two bearing up?
we're okay. Obviously, it's a little tough right now. We still have to come in every single day to feed the cats, play with them, change the litter boxes.
We have to make sure
it's-
everything's okay
Make
here.
sure that the cafe is in good shape, but it's tough because there's nothing going on.
Yeah, there's the cafe over there behind you, Carl. How are the cats doing?
The cats are doing okay, but I do think that they miss having all the people that they're used to coming to visit them. But we do try to spend a lot of time here with them, and so, like Carl said, we're here every day, and usually for several hours, and playing with lasers and toys.
They grew up with us. We got them as kittens, and then they grew up knowing people and knowing a lot of people, and then for them now to have nobody, it's a little tough on them.
I
But
think so.
we try to play as much as possible. We spend, like I said, every day here.
Yeah.
I come by after in the evenings and spend another hour or so with them, just so that they're somewhat used to people, but it's not the same as having walk-in traffic.
When you mentioned not having the walk-in traffic, you've got your faithful here, don't you? They come in, and
Oh yeah.
what are you hearing from customers who come in here to spend time with your cats?
Can't wait for you guys to be open again so that we can get back and enjoy some kitten time, some cuddle time with the cats.
Is it a fair assumption that a number of your patrons are lonely right now, or is that an assumption on my part, or do you think anybody's hurting because they can't be with the felines?
I actually believe so. We have a few people that come in here to spend time just with the cats because they might be by themselves, and these are their little companions. So they get to come and spend time with them, and they know them by names, and they come in or they walk past and say hi in the morning if we're not open yet, and so it's actually sad because that's gotten taken away from them right now as well. So.
What? Why did you open the business in the first place?
Love of animals,
Yeah.
a love of cats. We have cats at home as well. Cat cafes are very unique as far as being able to offer that companionship to people who really enjoy cats if they're traveling, especially in a tourist town. They love to pop in for kitty fix. Oh, I'm gone for 4 or 5 days, and I can come here and spend a half hour or an hour before the show and get my kitty fix, and I'm good. I'm ready to go.
I'm going to get back to the connection between Alley Cat Cafe and the Stratford Theatre Festival. I want to ask you a bit about the mechanics of things here. So, Silke, you're working a little bit, doing some online exercise classes. Carl, what do you do?
I used to be in facilities maintenance, so I've actually picked up some work here in Stratford to help us through these times,
Yeah.
doing some facility work.
Okay, and what about resources? In other words, by the way, I was walking past here the other day. I was quite surprised to see the cats here, but where else would they be, I guess? How are you managing to keep up with feeding them and making sure that they're cared for? Are you doing fundraising? Are you getting government support?
No, there's no support for the cats at all. We do have a few people who have donated to us just out of the goodness of their heart, but we haven't offered any fundraising or online opportunities because we're not a charity. We're an actual business, so it's a little more difficult to do it. So we're basically paying for them out of our own funds.
Yeah.
And
But some people would say, well, wait a minute, there's something along the lines of a GoFundMe campaign. Have you looked into those kinds of vehicles for?
No, we thought about it, but then right now it's like everybody is sort of in the same boat, and you
Yeah.
you don't want to ask for more help
And some of these fundraising campaigns have a fairly high percentage rate that you have to pay them. So to Silke's point, asking for people for money and then a percentage goes to GoFundMe doesn't seem to be quite right.
Yeah. The theater festival. Make the connection for us. It and your enterprise here, Alley Cat Cafe.
When the theater is on, we are pretty much sold out on a regular basis as far as people coming by, both for the cafe and for the kiddie visits. A lot of people will get in here just before the theater opens so that they can grab a coffee and a pastry or a quick bite to eat. And if they have time for cuddles with the cats, if they can't make it before the show, they often try to make it after the show. We close at 8 o'clock in the summertime, so there's no after the show for them, but there is before the show, and so they are trying to fit that into their plans, as well as the other restaurants in the downtown that they'll go for supper early, but then they might come here. I need a coffee so I don't fall asleep while I'm in the show, and while I'm at it, I may as well get some snuggle time with the kitties.
Can you take me back to the lead up to the opening? I remember the signage being up in the window. There was a pizza joint here prior, and so there was that sort of soft tease, you're coming soon. I know that some people, present company included, thought, wait a minute, I've seen a cat cafe in Chicago, and other places, Liverpool, England has one. How is it that Stratford could possibly have and hold a cat cafe? So when you look back to a year ago, or even more, when you were planning this, did you have any concerns about its viability in a little city of 32,000?
Not really.
Not really, no.
What was your business model? Can you give me it in brief?
Stratford, anytime that we came to Stratford when we were looking for a location, always was teeming with people.
Yeah.
No matter what time of the day, what time of the afternoon, there was always people here. To be successful with a cat cafe model, you have to be in a location that draws people. We have the university here, we have a college here, and then we have the theater here. So we have a good demographics of people, whether or not the theater's in, the university will be here. So there's always people. And that is unique to Stratford, which allows us to, when the theater's in and when the universities are here, we're going to be busy.
Go ahead, Silke.
I find that Stratford is a big cat community too. There's so many cat supporters here in Stratford that are trying to help the cats, and that's one of our main goals as well. We have our resident cats, and then we have our cats for adoption, which come from the local rescues in Stratford. And so, Stratford, we have a lot of cat lovers here that are very supportive, and then a couple of rescues too. So,
Yeah, and okay, so now here we are. We're in the middle of, well, we don't know if we're in the middle of anything right now during the great pause. No pun intended there, but here we are in a pandemic. You're a nascent business, relatively so. You've only been open for about 8 months, and now you're closed, and you've been closed for probably closing in on, 6 weeks?
Just over 6 weeks.
Over 6 weeks. So perhaps you know that our mayor in Stratford, Dan Matheson, has been quite provocative and I think quite candid about his statements about what the closure of the festival theater means, or the theater festival means to this town. This is, of course, the straw that stirs the drink, the theater festival. He's very concerned that we will see record commercial and personal bankruptcies, spiking unemployment. He describes our situation as 9/11 meets SARS meets the economic crash of 2008. That's a pretty grim assessment. What are your thoughts?
We like to think that we're going to be fine once we reopen. We're holding the fort here. We have a very forgiving landlord. So
What do you mean by that?
she's offered to, hold back on demanding the rent, like we've heard horror stories from other commercial tenants. So we're working with her. We have a very open relationship, which is good. We're hoping that this is going to be over sooner rather than later, and that we're going to be.
You know what they say, my mother always says it, live in hope, die in despair. Hope's not a strategy. What's your strategy to get through this and go forward? Silke, what are your thoughts?
Oh, we just have to keep going.
Yeah.
We're not ready to give up. We're gonna fight for this business and for the cats and do whatever we need to do. I hope everything works out for the best. I'm trying to be optimistic about it all. So
I think once
it's
the
hard, right?
government opens up businesses again and you start the soft reopening of the economy, we'll have a better picture as to how many people can we have in here. Is the social distancing rules still going to apply, and how are we going to work it with the cat cafe? Do we need masks? What do we need to do to make it viable, and how many people do we have in there? In what we call normal times, we had 10 to 12 people. Will that mean we have to have less? We're not sure.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. But you think that the cats will come back?
Oh yeah.
Cats will always be here.
According to Fred Penner, the cats will come back.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it, and all the best to both of you.
Thank you very much.